Warren High School Cafetorium with live stream available at warrencityschools.org. This meeting is a meeting of the Warren City Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participating during the meeting as indicated in agenda item number 11. Call to order. Would you all please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Scortino, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Doherty?
Present.
Mrs. Limperos?
Here.
Mrs. Patterson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Present.
And Mr. Fowley?
Yes. Item 3, executive session. Under the provisions of ORC 121.22, the Warren City Board of Education is recessing to executive session at 6:02 to discuss consideration of appointment, employment, promotion, etc. of public employees, investigation of charges or complaints against public employees, conference with an attorney involving pending legal action, matters required to be kept confidential by state or federal law, district security arrangements, and emergency response protocols. Thank you.
So moved. Second.
Any questions?
Call the roll.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes. And we will be returning for business as soon as this is concluded.
Yeah. Yeah, the book is going to I'm taking other stuff just in case. walking very nicely, so I'm hopeful.
Frank, are we ready? Thank you. The time is 6:48. We've returned from executive session. Mr. Shiro, communications.
I just have two communications for this evening. The first one I wanted to share with the board that we had a request from TNP to conduct a survey of some students over at McGuffey School. And this request is a collaboration project with the City of Warren and the Trumbull County Combined Health District to install a playground at Burbank Park. The point of what they're going to do is going into the lunch periods. Mr. Joseph is working with them at McGuffey, and the students will be placing a sticker on the poster of the playground or the playground equipment that they prefer. So they're working, to instill some of the TNP values with the students, surveying them as part of the project. So we have authorized that, and Mr. Joseph, again, is working with TNP to get that done here in the next couple weeks. My last communication that I have for this evening is I wanted to advise the board, you'll see on the agenda this evening, a resolution acknowledging Juneteenth. And again, that will be this year. It'll be observed in the Warren City Schools on June 20th, provided you approve the resolution. Senate Bill 11 was signed into law by Governor DeWine, and it becomes effective on June 10th, 2022, just days before the scheduled Juneteenth holiday. In approving Senate Bill 11, the governor and the legislature made Juneteenth a required holiday for 11 and 12-month non-teaching employees. Basically, it would be your 12-month contracted employees would be off on that Monday with pay, and that would be your transportation folks, your maintenance folks, year-round secretaries, year-round administrators, and I don't know if I'm missing anybody. So it's the folks that are currently under contract and would have reported to work on that day had they been scheduled. And so that is, again, part of the superintendent's reports.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none. Mrs. Scortino, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes. Treasurer's report.
Just wanted to give you a brief update on our accounting software upgrades. We have been working side by side in our current software and in our redesign package to try to, work out all of our kinks and make sure we're balancing and understanding payroll processes in the new system. So I anticipate this to be, we were hoping to start April 1st in terms of on the new system. However, we're at the mercy of one of our vendors who does our purchase requisitions and waiting on them to have us fully transitioned. So I want to make sure I have ample time to train our staff, all of our secretarial staff and whatnot. So it's been pushed back to mid-April, if ideally, but if not, May 1st. So we want to give ourselves enough time before fiscal year end to be on the new system. So just wanted to give you an update that, that's been on top of our normal activity. We're entering, data into both systems. So it's been pretty busy in the treasurer's office, but that's about it.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the treasurer? Superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Superintendent's report this evening is going to be facilitated by our Chief Academic Officer, Wendy Hartzell, and our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Regina Teutsch. This evening, they're going to present to the Board of Education the academic crosswalk. Ladies.
I know. I noticed.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share a little bit about, one, the history of where the crosswalk kind of came from, as well as the work that we have done and are in the process of doing and completing. And it's the work that we do to keep the school district kind of moving along, especially in the academic realm. So in 15-16, during that school year is when the Academic Distress Commission started visiting schools, and what they wanted to do is they wanted to come in and look at practices that were happening in schools. They wanted to look at what was working, what wasn't, and to then provide a report and make recommendations of things that they saw that they thought were going very well, and made recommendations of things to just pay a little bit of more attention to. So once that visit happened, and that was a week-long visit, there was a lot of meetings with not only district staff, but they also went into buildings, went into classrooms. There were parent meetings, there were community meetings. So, I mean, they really covered the whole aspect of stakeholders involved for our district. Once that happened, they took all their information and several artifacts that we provided for them with them. And what happened is they created a report. Once that report was created, it came back to the district, we reviewed it, and then we had some dialogue back and forth. The Academic Distress Commission actually came back in, and we were able to sit down and go through the report page at a time and look at the findings. The recommendations, if you look on the crosswalk that's been provided for you, on the left-hand side, they start with recommendations and challenges. And so that's kind of how the whole report was written is, here are the recommendations and here are challenges that we see. So as we were talking amongst our own district team, what we decided was, so how do we capture the work we do? How do we meet these recommendations and challenges? And how do we capture that work? So hence the crosswalk was birthed. And so following that process and those recommendations, this crosswalk actually represents the actions and tasks that are timelined out and that support the district goals that we follow and are aligned with in OIP. And so we have our OIP plan, but this is really the deep work that gets done in order to meet those goals. The Ohio Improvement Process is OIP, and it's really how we are able to work from a district to a building to teacher level teams, and how that communication flows back up, all rooted in data. So in 15-16, they came out. 16-17 was the very first crosswalk. If you notice on the right-hand side, it starts with 2021 on this sheet. We actually have 4 years on another packet of that work. It became too vast and we couldn't continue with the same form. So the other thing I just want to bring your attention to right now is next to the recommendations and challenges is something called priority. So what they did is the ADC also gave us priority things. And so 1 was the top priority, 2 was the next one that we should pay attention to, and 3 certainly we want to pay attention to, but it wasn't at that forefront. Okay. We have not changed any of those priorities since the inception of the crosswalk. However, it kind of ebbs and flows based on what the work is and where we are with certain things. And so even though the priorities are on there, the work that we do, it's embedded in everything. And so it's really hard to prioritize from one thing to the other. So I just want to start very quickly before I turn it over to Mrs. Teutsch, just talking very quickly between pages 1 and 2, and it's talking about our external partners. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is some. Further in the crosswalk, there are several others that are listed. They're just kind of embedded in the work, and they are constantly evolving. Even the buildings have partnerships that are not listed on this because not every building has the same ones. And so a couple of big ones that I do want to highlight, with our SEL, and you've heard Mr. Shiro talk about social emotional learning, and it is embedded in the foundation. That is brought in the district through CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And that is a huge partner, and that has really driven some of the work that we've done and been the foundation. Akron Children's Hospital is another big one, from the clinics and having registered nurses to telehealth to nurse practitioners. We've really been able to develop over the years great nursing services and medical services for our students. Second Harvest Food Bank is another big one, not only during the pandemic with some of the food drives that happened here at Harding with the food distribution, but also our Raider pantries. And those exist in each of our 5 buildings and supporting that work. Any Given Child through the Arts with Kennedy Center is another big one. It was a PK8 initiative for every student to be able to have an experience in the arts. And this year we actually have 17 teachers with arts integration. And once a week there's a art teacher from SMARTS that comes out, and they actually plan and they work with our teachers, and they're teaching concepts that teachers are naturally planning for, but they're doing it through the lens of art. Some it's writing, some it's music, but we've got that going on. And then we've got things, art and non-art spaces, where an artist comes in, and right now our target audience is K2, but they've come in and they've performed music and theater and dancing, and just giving kids an experience that they may not otherwise have had. SSTR5 is our state support team, and they help support us in our district work with the Ohio Improvement Process, and also with the Office of Exceptional Children. They have taken a strong role in working with our with Jen Hoffman, in our special ed realm, and making sure that we are writing good IEPs and making sure that we're following what we need to be doing there. And then the last one that I just want to bring attention to is Eastern Ohio Educational Service Center. They are our partner for the Business Advisory Council, which is where our career counselors, where we're getting a lot of work through industry recognized credentials and apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship, where we're doing a lot of that work. And so that's been a big one, especially since the pathways have been developed through the high school for graduation. And so those are just a sample of some of the partners that we have that we work with on a regular basis.
Okay, so continuing on, at the bottom of page 2, there was a reference to the Ohio Improvement Process. And really and truly for Warren City Schools, that wasn't something that we would deem a challenge. Warren City Schools has been embedded with the Ohio Improvement Process for a number of years, 10 plus, really going back a ways. So we've been doing this a long time. Has it morphed? Absolutely. It morphs with the demands of the school district, demands of accountability, and how that's ever evolving and what's required. So we continue to have all the pieces in place from, what's expected of a district leadership team, building leadership teams, and TBTs. So one of the things they talked about was size on there. And honestly, for us here, it was important to make sure that we had the stakeholders at the table to make decisions. So we would often break into smaller work groups in the bigger DLT, and that helped us manage the work. As we're moving forward, some of the things that you'll see referenced in the current years are things like the district literacy leadership team and the district math team, leadership team that we'll be creating. And the idea is now to move into what we would call work groups. And those work groups around the two major foundations of academics or school climate, like SEL. You have people coming to the table that are, it's their passion. They're researched about it. They'll spend the extra time. Maybe they belong to conferences or go to conferences or belong to professional organizations that help them help the district make decisions and do the work. So as we move into next school year, those work groups will be taking on a bigger role, still coming back to the DLT to report out, and then going into the buildings and helping them implement that work at the building level. This year, we are in the process of writing our next 3-year plan. This is probably the third 3-year plan since I've been here. The process has changed. The state has implemented a new tool, and we're working to get it done. But the whole idea is we will have an academic goal, a climate goal. The academic goal will be those foundational pieces, again, literacy, mathematics, and the idea of graduation, the end. So if we think about in K-5, making sure students can read, write, and do mathematics, and then 6 through 12, we're talking about college and career readiness on to graduation. And then we need the climate in which children can be nurtured in order for that to happen. And that's that side of the other side of the plan. So Once that comes out, you will all see that. That just takes some time. It will get submitted to the state at the end of this month for feedback, and they will let us know, and then we'll keep going. So, but that will be 3 years, hard to believe. 2026, I think, is the final. Okay, so moving on from there, one of the next sections on the bottom, on page 4 was the selection of instructional materials. The district here has had a long-standing policy and procedure, again, to involve stakeholders. And we do that all the way from our adoption of the mathematics program. Bridges was already in place when I came aboard, but CPM, it has stakeholders from all buildings, grade levels. We also involve parents to make decisions when we're adopting a large textbook curriculum. Those things will continue to happen. In last year, the year before, we really started to dig into Ohio's plan to raise literacy, and that has also now been the work of the literacy team as we make shifts towards more of that structured literacy and the dyslexic law that will come into play for next school year as well. So we really do work to make sure we have staff voice, parent voice, and then there's often surveys that will bring the student voice into the work that we're doing. On pages 5, 6, and 7, it speaks to MTSS, which is the multi-tiered systems of support. A lot of us know it as kind of the RTI when we think about the triangle. The whole idea of a triangle is one side's academic, one side's behavior. And, you know, it's what students need. Everybody starts in tier 1. That's what we call the core. Again, something for behavior, something for academics. Then there's a tier 2 and a tier 3, and it goes to need driven by data for students. So we've been working on decision rules for literacy, again, to get students all the way up to a tier 3, which right now is our Wilson for our students. We're going to be building that for mathematics, hence the reason we're starting the math work group. And then with Mr. Capers coming on board as the Associate Superintendent of Student Services, Wellness, and Success, he will be working towards that other side, especially with the climate. So the whole idea is to make that public, that all teachers, all staff, you are very well aware of when we're looking at student needs, what's next? Where do we go? Who do we go to? How do we implement? That's the idea of that. And that really is what the recommendations were to build that, to make that shift from what had been the RTI into the MTSS process.
So on page 7 and 8, it talks about integration of classroom technology. We've been very fortunate in this district that we've been very good stewards of our money and have had an opportunity to provide for our students in a myriad of ways. Right now, especially with our students, and every kindergarten and first grade student, every preschool and kindergarten student has an iPad that they keep at home, and every first through 12th grader has a device, a laptop. High school students take their devices back and forth to school. They use them a lot. And in the first through 8th grades, students can keep those at home because we have devices at school as well. So it's almost a 2-to-1. And, you know, we're very fortunate to be able to provide that for students. That allows them to not only have access to the technology and the learning platforms in school, but also out of school on their own time. We, a couple of years ago, decided to go with what's called a single sign-on. It's clever. And so what students do is they sign on to their computer, and once they do that, it opens up to every platform and every piece of instructional technology that they're going to need. And so they have little icons. The students can find what they need very easily. Teachers have their own pages. And so it does make it very easy to navigate for students. One of the other things that Mr. Nicholson has mentioned to the board and brought forth before was esports. That's also that technology piece. So I'm not going to steal his thunder because I'm sure there will be an update coming soon. But, you know, that's another piece that we're able to provide the technology and the equipment in order to add one more opportunity for students to be involved, to get plugged in, to find this niche that maybe they haven't had at this point. As we look at adoptions, as Regina was just talking about for the academic piece, we also look at those adoptions to see what academic components do they offer that's also technology-based, so that we can very easily make that transition, even if it's an intervention piece or whether it's, the book online or how they interact with the material itself. So we really try to look at that so it's not in isolation, but it can be used in both classroom and at home.
All right, so moving on. Pages 8 and 9, they talked about a systematic process for evaluations. Again, that was pretty smooth transition here as the state of Ohio was moving into OTES 1.0. We've now gone into OTES 2.0. We are in OPES 1.0 and leaving to OPES 2.0. And OSES guidance counselors. So as a school district, all the pieces were already in place. You had an evaluation committee. We get together, we talk, we understand about how to implement. The things that became very important that we took away from this report was making sure that we calibrate it. There are 4 PK8s, 1 high school. We needed to make sure what's the definition of differentiation? What does that look like and sound like in a classroom? What is classroom environment? We took every school year, the administrators can tell you in August, we'd come back and we would recalibrate as a team. What does this mean? And we will continue to do that because it's really good dialogue to have and it offers time for clarification. We just went through OTES 2.0 with our campus leaders, and again, we will start the same thing. The other things that were very important to Mr. Shiro and Ms. Hartzell at the time as we were implementing was making sure staff understood. If you're going to do an evaluation, we all need to understand the tool. If we're a teacher, we needed to make sure staff understood, what does this tool do for us? What should you expect from us? What do we do together collaboratively? And the whole idea, ODE always used the phrase, not a gotcha model, but we lived by this here. This was a tool of improvement. And that continues that same work as we've moved into now OTES 2.0. For principals who will be evaluated under the OTES 2.0, it's going to be important to do the same thing. Bring those who are not trained in it into that fold about what they should expect from the evaluation tool. So 2 things, it's always about calibration to make sure we are all walking that walk and understanding and making sure that others that the tool is being administered with and to, that we all understand together. So those were very important pieces that we continue to implement even now.
So on page 9, it talks about selection and assignment of new staff. So one of the things that we do here, we've been doing this for quite a while, it's a collaborative hiring process. And so what happens is when there is a candidate that will be interviewed, not only are usually Regina and I are there as the academic lens, but principals, there have been some teachers, guidance counselors have participated before. Depends on what the position is, but we try to get people from the buildings to have a stake in that and participate in that process. Some people, the last interview they've been in is the one they, were in for their own job. And so to bring them back through as questions have evolved and education has evolved so that they can be on the other end, because what they're doing is they're seeking the best candidate for our students. When we do hire, we hire for our district because based on needs where that person will land. So we don't hire for a particular building because that need may not be there at that particular place in the future. And so we look for a candidate that's going to be overall good for our students. Another thing is we actively seek out university candidates for a myriad of things. So one, we open our doors to several universities for field experience, preclinical, student teaching placements. The highest we've ever had in our district any one year, I think we had 84 candidates pre-COVID. And then that was in a year. And so we keep track of that and we take a lot of pride in that because the more, I look at it this way, the more students we get in here, we can watch them, we can help groom them, we can help train, even though they're still undergrads, as to some of our practices and good practices that we want to see in teachers, and we've had a good response of being able to hire those people. The other thing is that usually December graduates, either Mr. Shiro or myself will talk to the graduating classes in December, trying to showcase and explain to students that they have an opportunity most times to seek employment mid-year, with us. We also speak to spring candidates. This year, I'll be doing both an in-person and a virtual talk to spring graduates. And so that'll be the first time I do that. So that'll be pretty interesting. But we're trying to outreach as much as we can to make sure that people understand what we have to offer, because we've got great kids here. And sometimes people just don't know that.
That's great.
And it's been really good. I mean, we've had strong partnerships. Matter of fact, with the student teachers we have now, I'm starting to meet with each one of the student teachers prior to their end in April and May, and see, I've been talking to principals, we've been going into classrooms, watching them teach, watching them interact. So we have firsthand knowledge before they even get their diploma and their license.
So pages 10 and 11 address graduation. That is the final threshold when getting a student through their schooling career. And we were trying to really put some time on this, and we had to think back. 13, 14, we started the discussion of a graduation task force because the report card was going to change. Things were starting to change. So we went from OGTs to a brief stint with Park to end-of-course exams. So the graduation task force has evolved with all of those things, looking at data, following along. And now, in the new way of graduating students, we're talking about moving from the 18 points on those end-of-course exams into pathways. So the class of 2023 and beyond, our new set of rules. So that graduation task force keeps the data forward so that we know, and it's just not about seniors, it's about any student when they step in here as freshmen, getting all those different industrial credentials or certifications, giving kids opportunities in a myriad of ways to graduate. So that, again, has been always part of our plan and continues to.
So just the final piece for the crosswalk, on page 10 and then on page 12, one deals with safety plans and the other with capital improvements. Not really academic specifically in nature, but the safety plans is we want to make sure that we are abiding by everything that we can to make sure that the safety plans are up to date and current, and we're working with local officials to make sure that in the event of an emergency situation, that we are most prepared. And that's all I'll say about that, but we are up to date and we're following the guidance that's been given. As far as capital improvements, it just is a way to plan. One of the things that was mentioned as a recommendation is always to have a 5-year plan. So not only do we need to look at what do we foresee or what do we want 5 years from now, but with our current buildings, do we need updates? Do we need to plan for a project like the Willard Roof project? That was nothing planned for, but to be good stewards of money allows you to be able to do those things. Replacing buses for our bus fleets and making sure that our students have safe transportation. So all of those things take a lot of planning, and one thing I'm very thankful for is the district has been very financially responsible and is able to plan for things and handle things that come up in emergency situations without skipping a beat. So, and that is the crosswalk. And it says draft because this is ever evolving. It will continue to say draft because it's a fluid document that gets updated on a regular basis. Any questions?
Thank you. Do any of the board members have a question or comment?
Page what page, Mr. Walker? 10?
As far as under creating culture of collaboration, selection and deciding the new staff, that section. On the right, is that 10? 9, sorry, 9.
It's page 9.
Yeah, I can address that.
I'm sorry, what did he say? I couldn't hear him down here.
On page 9, the second bullet, design and implement a detailed plan for human resources that includes the collaborative role of building leadership across the district and hiring process. Include in the plan a recruitment process that attracts a diverse group of applicants and objective screening and selection processes. So that goes to the collaborative hiring process that is in place that before this, the HR was the hiring function, or people would be out as building principals seeking. Now we have a process going through the HR office where we're streamlining applications. The building campus leaders and other supervisors have access to them, as well as the central office folks. And they are going through and working when we do interviews to determine who has what openings and what is the process for evaluation and appraisal. This also goes back to our university work in monitoring our folks within our buildings, determining if they're ready for an interview and placement in the district. When we start talking about grooming students for potential teaching possibilities in the Warren City Schools, this is our work with Inspiring Minds with the Summer Career Development Program, for example, where the Warren City Schools has funded positions for students to work in our summer programs that are students that are in the Inspiring Minds program or past graduates that come back and work for the summer. We offer them a salary that is at a competitive summer wage for them to work in our summer programs. We have had students that came in that were in nursing and ended up changing to education through a summer and work with us. So that's in collaboration with meeting those goals.
Any additional questions? Thank you. And thank you both.
I
Thank you.
wanted to make a comment
Just,
that I'm
ladies.
really glad to see that we do have that collaboration going on with the university students. That's a great thing.
And you know, and I'll be honest with you, there is a little bit of stress that we've experienced recently with Youngstown State University because they work with Warren City Schools and they work with the school district similar in size to the south of us. And we have a plan and a direction and a vision where we're going, and we do not necessarily agree or sign off to participate in all grant opportunities because it doesn't meet where we're going as a district. And I believe other districts may sign off on anything because they're looking for direction. Direction is not going to come to you. You have to form your direction, and you have to backfill it with the appropriate work. And that has created a little bit of hardship because I get a feeling that Youngstown State University believes that anything they throw in our direction should be better than what is going on. Well, this is evidence that there's a lot of great things that are going on, and we have to be selective. And I think they are taken aback that there's been grant and partnership opportunities that a couple of them we've elected not to partner with for one reason or another. And really and truly, a lot of that's come through my office because the question is, how does this fit? How does this fit with the work we're doing? If it doesn't tightly align, we're not spending our time, energy, and resources doing it. So we do have, I think, a great relationship that we've built over the years with the universities. I'd like to see that expanded to other universities. We have been really fortunate that we've been a great feeder site, especially with YSU, but I would like to see stronger support and collaboration with the College of Education over the years from them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
That was good.
Board of Education Committee reports. Athletics.
The only thing I have is we have an athletic council meeting this Thursday at
That was short and sweet, thank you. Finance?
I have nothing to
No,
report.
no report. Board policies and guidelines?
I do have a tentative date with Barb Roby from Neola. It is April 27th at 1:30 PM. If Ms. Patterson and Ms. Doherty are available, please let me know, because that is the date that I have that we could meet with her. So if that date doesn't work, let me know, and I'll find an alternate date.
Okay. I think it'll work for me, but I'll let you know for sure. Jenna?
Yeah, I'll check, but
Okay.
it'll, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Legislative liaisons?
Yeah, on March 3rd, I participated in the Ohio School Board Association, the Urban Network Update via Zoom, which was really nice. I didn't have to drive to Columbus. So it was a really robust conversation with our urban partners across the state. We talked about pending legislation that's out there right now. The backpack bill, of course, with the vouchers was a heavy topic of discussion. A lot of folks shared their use of ESSER dollars, their creative use of ESSER dollars within their school districts, and that was nice to hear about that. Also, there was a committee out of the Urban Network that was working on revisions and changes to the state report card that they were going to be recommending to the legislature, and that's kind of taken a back seat. They talked about coming back with that and meeting again. So that's kind of on the forefront there too. But it was very nice to talk with our urban partners and just see everyone's on the right track. But we're definitely on the cutting edge on a lot of things. So
Great.
we're doing good things in Warren City.
Thank you. Mr.
You're
Walker?
welcome.
I don't have anything else to add.
TCTC, Mrs.
Yes.
Patterson?
Yes, sir. I know you guys probably have heard of the Early Innovators Academy, where TCTC is offering, they offered an opportunity for our ninth grade students across the partnership of the 20 districts that they partner with, the opportunity to join them in the fall of this year in STEM coursework. And so out of the 50 students that were awarded a spot in the classroom, there were 92 who all applied. And out of the 92, 50 were selected, and 101 altogether. 50 were selected and 51 were put on a wait list. Out of that 51, 6 applied from Warren City Schools and 3 were selected. Their selection process had to do with random drawing. So, and then those who are on the wait list, if any of them drop out who are in the 50, they will select from that wait list. And so again, we've had 3 students who were selected, and they will begin to attend in the fall of this year, TCTC.
Okay.
Ninth grade students.
Ninth grade.
Ninth grade students.
Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. Old business? None. New business? None. Mrs. Doherty, page 3.
Treasurer's recommendations. Minutes, it is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the February 2022 board minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns? Would the treasurer please call the roll?
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes?
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes. The monthly financial statement on page 4. Mrs. Limperos.
It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the February 2022 financial statement and short-term investments made by the treasurer during February 2022, Exhibit A, pages 30 to 31, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? Would the treasurer please call the roll?
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes. On page 6, Mrs. Patterson, the tax rates.
The tax rates. It is recommended the resolution listed below for tax rates for fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2022 be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? Mrs. Cortino, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes. Mr. Walker, page 7, Superintendent's recommendations, and would you please read it in its entirety?
Certainly. Superintendent's recommendations. Juneteenth as a paid holiday. It is recommended the resolution listed below to observe Juneteenth as a paid holiday be approved as submitted. Whereas Senate Bill 11 of the 134th General Assembly has been passed into law and become effective June 10th, 2022, and whereas the bill amends revised code 3319.087 to provide Juneteenth as a paid holiday to 11 and 12-month non-teaching employees, and whereas due to the newest of the legislation, the Juneteenth holiday is not listed as a paid holiday in the official district calendar. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Warren City School District Board of Education that Section 1, the board hereby authorizes Juneteenth Day as a paid holiday for all 11 and 12-month contracted employees that would have been otherwise been scheduled to work on the Juneteenth day or day immediately before or after. The observance of such holiday, when the day occurs on a weekend, shall be in accordance with district holiday practices as reflected in applicable collective bargaining agreements or employee contracts. Section 2, it is found and determined that all formal actions of this board concerning or related to the adoption of this resolution were adopted in open meeting of this board, and all deliberations of this board and any of its committees, if any, that resulted in such formal actions were adopted in meetings open to the public, in compliance with all applicable requirements of the Ohio Revised Code.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? Would the treasurer please call the roll?
Mr. Walker?
A wholehearted, joyful, ecstatic yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowley?
Yes. Thank you, Julian. Page 8, Ohio Schools Council Cooperative Advertising and Receiving Bids for School Bus Chassis and Bodies. Mrs. Doherty.
It is recommended the resolution listed below to approve the Ohio School Council Cooperative Advertising and Receiving Bids for School Bus Chassis and Bodies be approved as submitted.
Second.
Questions or concerns? Would the treasurer please call the roll?
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes. Mrs. Limperos, page 9, the resolution to authorize the superintendent.
A resolution to authorize superintendent to notify the Ohio Department of Education regarding Katie Keenan. Whereas on May 25, 2021, the Board of Education for the Warren City Schools approved the continuing contract of Katie Keenan, teacher, for the 2021-2022 school year. And whereas, after the start of the school year, said teacher communicated individually her intention to resign, creating a hardship for the district. And whereas, said communications were not received within the timeframes prescribed by law for unilateral termination of the employment relationship. And whereas, the board received a letter of resignation from the employee that was not accepted or approved by the superintendent, and the employee has not provided any reasonable justification for resigning her teaching assignment. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education authorizes and directs the superintendent to notify the Ohio Department of Education's Office of Professional Conduct of the employee's unilateral termination of the employment relationship after July 10, 2021, without the consent of the Board of Education in violation of Ohio Revised Code, Section 3319.15.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? Mrs. Scortino, please call the roll.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes. Page 10, the revised salary table. Mrs. Patterson, please.
The revised salary table M, classified hourly salary table. It is recommended the resolution listed below adopting changes to salary table M, classified hourly salary table, be approved as submitted with changes as recommended.
Second.
Questions or concerns? Mrs. Scortino, please call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes. Page 11, the Ohio Department of Education certification. Mr. Walker, this one is shorter.
You want me to read it in its entirety?
No, thank you.
Okay, I was like, again? Okay. The Ohio Department of Education certification for Ohio Teachers Evaluation System and Ohio Principals Evaluation System. Not that much shorter. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the Ohio Department of Education certification for credentialed Ohio Teachers Evaluation System and Ohio Principals Evaluators be approved as submitted.
Second?
Any questions or concerns? Would Mrs. Scortino please call the roll?
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowley?
Yes, and the motion carries.
There we go.
Acceptance of gifts. Mrs. Doherty.
Acceptance of gifts. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding acceptance of gifts be approved as submitted. The benefactors, we have Boscov's to Warren City Schools a monetary donation of $90 to be used to support the students of Warren City Schools, and Mr. and Mrs. Jack Mullen Jr. To the athletic department, a monetary donation of $50 to be used to support the students of Warren G. Harding High School.
Second.
Questions or concerns? Mrs. Scortino, please call the roll.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowley?
Yes. And again, we want to thank our benefactors. Every board meeting, there are gifts, and we are very, very grateful. Page 13, Mrs. Limperos, tuition reimbursement.
It is recommended the resolution listed below for tuition reimbursement be approved as submitted.
Second.
Questions or concerns? Mrs. Scortino, please call the roll.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes, the motion carries. Page 14, personnel recommendations. Mrs. Patterson.
It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding personnel items A through P be approved as submitted. I believe that takes us to page 27.
Yes.
Second.
We do
Any
have-
questions or concerns?
We do have two
Yes, we do.
classified retirements on page 22.
Is, okay, yes, we do. Page 22,
Yes, I've got it.
okay.
There are, I can't read this. There are two retirements, okay? Millie Huntspiller and Marjorie Walker, and we thank them for their service. And we have a resignation on page 23, Jessica Kimbler, and we thank her also for her service.
We got a
Second.
I think Jenna had second.
Any further questions or concerns? Mrs. Scortino, please call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
If I could take a moment, I just wanted to recognize your new Executive Director of Special Education, Patricia Dreher, who is joining the A-Team.
Congratulations.
Welcome aboard.
I'd like to thank you for your support in allowing us to get Patty in as soon as possible. As I communicated with the board, she comes with great experience, and most recently is working as some of our support through SST Region 5. So not everything you'll see from her department will look like the crosswalk, but it will be framed with that same level of competency. I believe that will be the case. So Patty, welcome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you and welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Are there any board recommendations? Is there public participation?
No one has signed up.
No one has signed up. Okay. At this time, the board will adjourn to executive session for consideration of appointments, employments, promotion, etc. of public employees and matters to be kept confidential by state or federal law. And our attorney, Mrs. Spencer, will be joining us. There will be no action taken after the meeting, and the meeting will be adjourned.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Mrs. Scortino?
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Doherty?
Yes.
Mrs. Limperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Thank you all.